And here are Greg Skordas and Dave Colley on KSL NewsRadio
Not
talking
exactly Holly Richards.
about where we are. And I appreciate you being here and bailing me out today. Holly's on vacation for a couple of weeks, and this would be a hard thing to do alone.
Oh, yeah.
So you're a hero for doing this, Dave. I want to talk about the 14th Amendment. It's something that we often think of as giving us the concept of due process and having the states be part of the legal proceedings and giving them certain rights. But one of the things written in fact, it's the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, I believe, and it was passed at the conclusion of the Civil War, and it was passed to prevent southern states from deporting slaves. Because at the time, we had abolished slavery, and so then southern states were maybe inclined to say, okay, well, you guys shouldn't be here. You're not citizens. We're going to deport you. So they passed the 14th Amendment, which says at the outset, if you're born here, you're a citizen.
Birthright citizenship.
Birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
But it was passed for that purpose. That was the purpose of it. And it's been law for 250 years. I forget what year it was passed. It was a long time ago. And nobody's really questioned it until now. One of the first things President Trump did when he took office was he signed an executive order banning birthright citizenship. He just said, we're not doing this anymore. And what he's claimed, and there's some legal thought to this, because you go back to the framers of the Constitution and you look at what we call intent. What was their intent? Was their intent to provide, if I was arguing this on the behalf of the administration, that someone who's here illegally, who crosses our border, who happens to have a child while they're here, suddenly is able to call that child a U.S. citizen simply by the fact that they snuck in and had a baby while they're here? Was that the intent of the framers of not the framers, but the people that amended the Constitution at that time? Or was it to protect slaves? Well, obviously it was to protect slaves, but we've never challenged it. So he issues this executive order saying, no, this has gone way too far, and that's not what anybody intended when we enacted the 14th Amendment. So he does the executive order, basically I'm doing away with it. And it's an interesting legal juxtaposition that happened next. That is this, that people started filing lawsuits in Delaware and Michigan and Massachusetts and getting judges to say, no, you can't do this. And so the judges are issuing these orders. And if you think about it, and I'm getting way into the weeds here, we have federal courts in all 50 states. And we probably have some states have multiple federal courts. We have one with the District of Utah. So let's say you have 100 federal courts in America. We probably have more than that. That's the potential to get 100 different rulings by judges. So in order to avoid that, a judge would issue a ruling saying the president's executive order is unconstitutional, and so the judge in Texas enters an order that says that. Does that mean in Utah it's unconstitutional? And so it was the idea of the universal order, the blanket order that one federal judge could issue a ruling that applies to the whole country. And so the appeal that the administration took, that the Trump administration took, was not to say, hey, you shouldn't have outlawed this law, this executive order, but you shouldn't have made it nationwide. You can't have a nationwide injunction. And the Supreme Court said, you know what, you're right. Judges shouldn't be doing that. Now, the flip side is, so what do you have, 50 different rulings? You know what I mean? So, but on the other hand, should a judge in Utah be able to bind all of the people in Massachusetts to a certain idea, certain ideology? So the administration, it was an interesting run that they did, end run, because there's no question that this was their intent all along, not to do away with the 14th Amendment, but to do away with universal rulings that apply nationwide. And the Supreme Court seems to be on board with that. Now, what they invited was, they said, well, let's say that people file a class action lawsuit in a certain jurisdiction. We represent all of the people that are in a particular class of people that were born in the United States and that this could affect. That would be allowed. And of course, that's the next thing that happened after the Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to have universal injunctions, that we're not going to have this, we're not going to let these bind the whole country. So that's now what the administration is trying to deal with. They're saying to the Supreme Court, wait a minute, we still need to revisit these how we're going to handle cases when we have issues in 50 different courts, but we're still not ready to address the issue of whether or not we should outlaw birthright citizenship. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me drag you back out of the weeds a little bit here, Greg, because you sent me this article, SCOTUS blog article,
right?
And I remember when that executive order was issued earlier in the year, and just on the face, as you very well laid out there is this, constitutional amendment that explains birthright citizenship. We have this executive order from the president that, basically says it's going to change it, and as you would expect, that prompted legal action.
Right.
And so I guess that's about where I lost track of this. Because we're getting hit by so much news every day, and it was like, yeah, that's a case, and it's in the courts, and it'll bubble up to the top of my news feed when it is relevant. Well, that relevance is now, because as we understand, the administration is asking the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, to weigh in on the question. But as you explained, like how we got here, it has been a very convoluted kind of process. And so what are you thinking with, essentially what we understand now is this is potentially a question before the U.S. Supreme Court as to whether or not this executive order is going to hold any force. With that background, where are we looking?
Well, so I'm going to play just a soundbite here from the legal contributor Jay Sample, who said that even the fact that the Supreme Court is willing to hear this, whatever they decide, is a win for Trump.
He'd certainly prefer to win in this case, and he would consider that, I'm sure, one of his crowning achievements. But a loss here would fire up the base in ways that he sees as favorable.
What he's trying to say there is that maybe the weight of the public opinion is that we have taken this 14th Amendment too far, and that maybe we do need to. So universal injunctions are one thing, but at some point maybe somebody's going to have to address this, and we may have a change in the way we define our Constitution. Was that the original intent of the constitutional amendment to go this far? And I know I've kind of talked myself in a circle a little bit here, but at some point we're going to have to address that. And that's what the dissenters said. Hey, you're missing forget universal injunctions. Let's cut to this is so unconstitutional. Why are we even arguing it? Let's just say that it's bad. And the courts have said, no, that's not the question. The question is, what can you do about universal injunctions? Are they legal? The answer is they're not. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a mess.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court's going to weigh that out and tell us kind of where we are in the future. This is the kind of stuff that makes me happy.
Clearly, like, you get very invested in it. I'm just curious, Greg, like the Supreme Court, they don't have to take this, right? They can choose to not even hear the case.
That's another thing, and that's why they said this is a win for Trump just by taking it up. Yeah, that'll be the interesting question. They can decide to grant what's called certiorari. We want to hear this case, or they may say, it's not ripe yet.
Okay, more to be seen.
Yeah, seriously. So when we come back, I want to talk to you about something that you've done that I really I just want to hit on it again. It's about you went to Triangle and that series, that podcast you created, because I listened to it and I couldn't get away from it, and I want to revisit it, if you don't mind, when we come back.
Absolutely. Thanks.